The night had a way of swallowing the small village whole. Fog curled like a living thing through the narrow streets, hiding cracked cobblestones and the shadows of shuttered houses. From her small, drafty home, Elara stepped out carefully, balancing a basket of herbs and bread. Her mother was sick again, her breathing shallow, her skin pale under the weak candlelight. There was no time to waste. Elara moved quietly, every step cautious. The village had always whispered about the castle perched on the hill, a looming shadow of black stone and jagged towers. They said the vampire king, Kale, lived there, a man or a monster who had ruled for centuries. No one dared approach him. No one, that is, except tonight, when the last of the herb stores in the village had run out. She didn't know the path would take her near the castle. Mist thickened, curling around her legs, and the cold wind carried whispers that seemed more like voices. The stories of the vampire king flashed through her mind. Pale skin like marble, eyes black as the abyss, and a heart they said could never feel warmth. But Elara had no time for fear. She only wanted to save her mother. Her foot caught on a root, hidden under the mist, and she fell forward, flailing. Panic surged as she tried to steady herself, but before she could hit the cold stone ground, strong arms caught her. She gasped and looked up, expecting a villager or a guard, but instead met eyes so dark and deep it felt as though the night itself had looked back at her. The man was tall, impossibly elegant, with skin pale as the moon. His hair was black as the midnight sky, and his presence alone seemed to bend the shadows around him. Elara froze, unsure if she should be terrified or in awe. I'm sorry," she stammered, instinctively holding him tight. It was only a hug, a desperate grasp for balance, but it was enough. Kale felt it immediately, a warmth he had not known in centuries. In that brief, clumsy embrace, something in him stirred a flicker of longing, of curiosity, of a deep ache that had been buried under centuries of rule and isolation. He gripped her gently, though the strength in his arms could have crushed her. "You," he began, but the word caught in his throat. His voice was smooth, low, and frighteningly calm, but there was an edge of disbelief. No mortal had ever dared touch him. And yet, here was this poor, trembling girl, clinging to him without fear, without awe or terror. Elara pulled back slightly, her heart pounding. "I didn't mean to. I just—" She swallowed hard, trying to explain. But words felt useless. His eyes were like a storm, dark and endless, pulling her in. Kale studied her. The softness of her hands, the desperation in her voice, the courage in her eyes, it was unlike anything he had seen in centuries. Humans were fragile, fleeting, easily broken, yet here she was, alive, vibrant, and unafraid. "You are not like the others," he said finally, his tone both a statement and a question. Elara blinked, uncertain how to respond. She only nodded, unable to speak. The mist seemed to swirl closer around them, as if the night itself had stopped to watch. Kale's mind raced. He had ruled this land for hundreds of years, and yet he could not understand this sudden pull, this undeniable attraction to a mortal girl. It was forbidden, dangerous, and foolish, but he could not ignore it. He released her slowly, letting her step back, though he found his gaze unwilling to leave her. "You should not be here," he said, his voice low but firm. "This place is not safe for someone like you. I needed herbs for my mother," she whispered, shivering in the cold night. "She is very sick, and Kale studied her again, and something in him softened. Centuries of darkness and cruelty had hardened him, but in her eyes, he saw honesty, courage, and a light that had long been absent from his world. "You risked your life," he said, more to himself than to her. "Do you even know who I am?" Elara's eyes widened. "Yes, the Vampire King." The words tasted strange on her tongue, almost like a curse, but she spoke them without fear, only a quiet awe. Kale's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Few speak my name without trembling," he murmured. "And yet you do not fear me." There was a long silence between them, broken only by the wind whistling through the towers. Ilara's breath came in small, visible puffs in the cold air, and Kale felt something stirring deep within, a longing that scared him more than any blade or spell ever could. "You should go," he said finally, though his voice betrayed a hesitation he did not understand. "Leave now, before someone finds you here. The castle is dangerous." Ilara hesitated. "But my mother." Kale's gaze softened again, and he found himself unable to refuse her. "Take the path through the forest," he said. "It will be faster than the village roads. Go now, before it is too late." Her eyes searched his, and in that moment, a strange understanding passed between them. Neither spoke it aloud, but both felt it. Something had shifted. A connection had formed in that fleeting touch, in that accidental hug. Before she could move, Kale stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, and whispered, "Stay alive, Ilara. You are important." Ilara nodded, not fully understanding why the words made her heart race, and ran into the fog, basket clutched tightly. Behind her, Kale watched, his mind a whirlwind. He had ruled with power, with fear, with darkness, but never with this vulnerability. For centuries, he had never wanted a human, not truly. And yet, in that instant, he knew he wanted her. The night closed in around him, quiet and still. His guards patrolled the outer walls, unaware of the fragile mortal girl who had touched their master's heart. Kale walked to the edge of the castle balcony, looking down at the mist-covered village below. His fingers curled against the stone railing. No one could know what had happened. No one could understand the pull he felt. And yet, he could not stop thinking about her, the poor girl who had hugged the vampire king. Something had awakened in him. Something dangerous. Something he could not name. And he knew, deep in the shadows of his immortal soul, that nothing would ever be the same again. That night, as the fog swallowed the village and the castle towers loomed like silent sentinels, Kale sat alone in his throne room, staring at the empty space where she had almost fallen into his arms. For the first time in centuries, he felt fear not of enemies, but of what his heart had chosen. And far below, in the quiet village, Ilara returned home, unaware that a centuries-old king had just fallen, and that her simple, desperate hug had set a chain of events in motion that would change both their lives forever. The next morning, the village was quiet, almost too quiet. Ilara moved through the misty streets, her basket of herbs now empty, her mind restless. The memory of last night lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. She had hugged the vampire king Kale without even meaning to. And yet, his eyes, dark and endless, haunted her thoughts. She tried to convince herself it was nothing. He was a king, powerful, dangerous. She was a poor girl with no place in his world. But the feeling she had felt when he held her, it was unlike anything else. Warmth, strength, and something deeper, something she could not name. Meanwhile, high above the village, in the black towers of the castle, Kale could not forget her either. He paced in his chamber, the moonlight spilling through tall windows and catching the pale lines of his face. His mind was a storm of thoughts he had not experienced in centuries. How could a simple mortal touch awaken such feelings in him? How could her small hands, so fragile and human, have stirred the long-buried hunger of his soul? Kale had ruled with fear for centuries. He had kept humans at a distance, treating them as pawns or tools. Love, friendship, warmth, these were things he had long abandoned. And yet, last night, a spark had ignited inside him, a spark he did not know how to control. He summoned one of his loyal guards, a tall, silent man named Lorien, whose presence alone commanded obedience. "Find her," Kale said, his voice steady but cold. "Not to punish. Protect her. Keep her safe." Do not let anyone harm her. Lorien bowed and disappeared into the castle corridors. Kael watched the mist swirl below, feeling an ache he did not recognize. Protect her. The words repeated in his mind. For centuries, he had protected nothing but his own power, and now, he would risk that power for a mortal girl. Meanwhile, Elara returned home, careful not to speak of what had happened. Her mother slept peacefully, and the herbs seemed to help her breathe easier. But Elara could not stop thinking of Kael, of the intensity in his eyes, of the strange warmth she had felt in his arms. Days passed. Elara tried to ignore the memory, but the castle seemed always at the edge of her thoughts. The villagers whispered rumors of a stranger. A pale man moving through the mist, seen only at night. Some said it was the Vampire King, patrolling his lands. Others said it was a curse, a shadow of death walking among them. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting the village in gold and shadow, Kael appeared at her home. His arrival was silent, almost unreal. He did not knock. He did not announce himself. He simply appeared at the edge of the garden, the wind carrying the scent of the castle, cold and commanding. "Elara," he said, his voice low and commanding, yet softer than she expected. Elara froze, her heart pounding. "You, again," she whispered. Kael stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "You cannot stay here. The village is not safe for you. There are people who would harm you if they knew you had been near the castle." Elara's mind raced. I'm not afraid. I can take care of myself." Kael studied her carefully. Her courage intrigued him. Most humans would have cowered or fled at the mere sight of him. But she stood tall, despite her small frame and her mortal fragility. "You do not understand," he said, a hint of frustration in his tone. "The world you live in. It is not meant for someone like you. The castle, the night, the darkness that surrounds me. It is dangerous." Elara shook her head. "I do not care. My life is my own. I cannot hide forever. I have to help my mother. I have to live." Kael's expression softened. For centuries, he had known only fear, power, and solitude. And yet, this mortal girl, so ordinary, so fragile, had something extraordinary. She had fire, and for the first time, he felt a strange need to nurture, to protect, to care. "Then come with me," he said finally. "I will not leave you to risk your life. You will be safe at the castle." Elara's eyes widened. "The castle?" Kael nodded. "You have already entered it once, even if by accident. Now, I ask you willingly. Come, I will protect you." She hesitated. Fear warred with curiosity. And yet, there was a part of her, deep in her heart, that longed to see the truth behind the stories, to see the man who had haunted the village's whispers for centuries. I will go," she said softly. The journey to the castle was unlike anything she had imagined. Mist clung to her as she walked through the forest path Kael had directed, and the castle rose before her like a dark mountain of stone and shadow. Its towers pierced the sky, and the windows glowed faintly with candlelight. Elara's heart raced, not with fear, but with anticipation. Kael led her through grand halls, corridors lined with ancient tapestries and flickering candles. The air was cool and smelled faintly of old stone and night flowers. Despite its dark elegance, the castle was not menacing. It was alive with history, with stories of power, sorrow, and time. He brought her to a small room near the tower, overlooking the village. It was simple, almost humble compared to the grandeur of the castle. Yet it had a warmth that surprised her. Kael stepped back, giving her space. "You will be safe here," he said. "No one will harm you, and I will know where you are at all times." Elara nodded, grateful but uneasy. "Why? Why are you helping me?" Kael looked away, his jaw tight. "Because I cannot ignore you. Your courage, your honesty, it calls to something in me I thought I had lost long ago. I do not understand it, But I cannot let anything happen to you. Alara felt a strange warmth at his words. Even as fear remained, there was trust. Slowly building, like sunlight breaking through clouds, she could see a man behind the legend, a man who had known centuries of loneliness, and who now, in some inexplicable way, wanted to connect with her. Days passed, and Alara adjusted to the castle life. She helped in the kitchens, tended to small gardens, and walked the corridors under Kale's watchful eye. They did not speak much at first, but every glance, every gesture carried weight. The tension between them grew not of lust or desire, but of deep curiosity and the beginnings of trust. Kale found himself observing her in ways he had never allowed himself to observe anyone. Her laughter, soft and genuine, echoed through the halls. Her eyes, bright and full of life, seemed to shine even in the gloom of the castle. And every time she smiled at him, something inside him stirred a longing he did not understand. One evening, Kale took her to the highest tower, where the wind whipped and the stars stretched endlessly across the sky. "Do you see that?" he asked, pointing to the distant mountains, their peaks glinting in silver moonlight. Alara nodded. "They are beautiful. They have stood longer than any king, any human, any castle," Kale said softly. "Yet they endure. They do not fear the storms, the darkness. Perhaps there is something we can learn from them." Alara looked at him, sensing the unspoken truth. "You are afraid?" Kale shook his head slowly. "I have ruled through fear for centuries. I have never let anyone close. But you are different. And that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could." Alara reached out, placing a hand lightly on his arm. "Not in defiance, not in fear, but in understanding. I am not your enemy," she whispered. Kale's breath caught. That simple touch, so human, so gentle, sent a shiver through him. He had spent centuries, untouched, unloved, untethered, and now, a mortal girl had pierced the walls around his heart with nothing but her courage and warmth. But just as a sense of peace began to settle, a shadow moved outside the tower window. Kale stiffened, eyes narrowing. Someone or something was approaching. His centuries of instinct, honed in darkness and danger, flared. He stepped in front of Alara, protective, commanding. "Stay behind me," he ordered softly, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Alara obeyed, her heart pounding. The danger was real, and yet, she felt no fear. Not while he was near. And then the wind whispered through the towers, carrying a threat that made Kale's dark eyes glint with steel. The outside world was not done with them yet. Their fragile bond, their tentative trust, would be tested sooner than either of them expected. The night was darker than usual, thick with mist that clung to the castle like a living thing. Alara stood at the window of her small room, looking out over the courtyard below. Shadows moved like whispers, and she could feel the tension in the air. Something was coming. She didn't know what. But Kale's presence, strong and protective, gave her courage. Kale stood behind her, silent and still. His eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and calculating. For centuries, he had ruled with fear. But tonight, he did not think of power or control. He thought only of her, of the fragile, courageous mortal girl who had touched his soul and awakened something he did not understand. "Alara," he said softly, his voice low like the rumble of distant thunder. "You must stay close. This night is dangerous. I cannot let anything happen to you." She turned to him, searching his face. "I am not afraid," she whispered. "I trust you." Kale's chest tightened. Trust was not something he had ever offered or received. And yet, here she was, offering it freely, without fear, without hesitation. Her courage humbled him, and his desire to protect her grew stronger with every heartbeat. A sudden sound from below shattered the silence. Footsteps, careful but determined. Kale's eyes narrowed, and he moved with the grace of a predator. Silent and swift. Toward the balcony, Alara followed, her heart racing, yet strangely calm in his presence. In the courtyard below, a group of masked figures approached, their intentions clear. Kale recognized them immediately, rivals within his own court, those who had long plotted against him. Now daring to strike while he was distracted. "They are not here for me," he murmured, more to himself than to her. Ilara's hand found his arm instinctively. "Then we face them together," she said, her voice steady. Kale looked down at her, surprised by her bravery. Most mortals would have fled, screamed, or hidden. She stood, small but defiant, her eyes meeting his with a strange mixture of trust and challenge. He allowed himself a brief, faint smile. "Very well," he said, his voice firm. "Stay close to me." The attackers moved forward, shadows among shadows. Kyle descended the stairs, with Ilara at his side, his presence commanding, his movements fluid and silent. The courtyard seemed to shrink around them, the night bending to his will. The first figure lunged. Kale was faster, moving with precision that only centuries of skill could grant. A single sweep of his arm sent the intruder sprawling, unconscious but unharmed. The next approached. But Kale's strategy was careful. He could not risk her life, nor did he wish to cause lasting harm. Ilara followed closely, dodging and weaving, guided by his calm instructions. She was terrified, yet she felt alive in a way she had never known. Fear and trust intertwined, and she realized that she was no longer a simple village girl. She was part of something larger, something dangerous, and something beautiful. The attackers paused, realizing that their plan had failed. Kale's reputation was legendary. But what they did not understand was that tonight, it was not just power that protected him. It was something more human, something deeper. "Ilara, behind me," Kale commanded. He stepped forward, moving with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly, shielding her with his body. The attackers faltered, their confidence shaken by the unyielding presence of the Vampire King. Then, in a flash of movement, Kale disarmed them, sending them stumbling backward without serious harm. The courtyard was silent once more, except for the ragged breaths of those who had dared challenge him. Kale's dark eyes turned to Ilara. "Are you unharmed?" he asked. She nodded, though her heart still raced. "Thanks to you," she said quietly. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The night was still, the mist curling around them, and the castle towers loomed like silent witnesses to a bond that had grown in the shadows. Kale reached out, placing a hand gently on her cheek. "You are brave," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "More than anyone I have ever known." Ilara looked up at him, feeling the warmth of his touch, the strength of his presence, and something else, something she could not name. "I only do what I must," she said softly. "But I care for you, Kale, more than I understand." Kale's chest tightened. He had known love in the stories, in the fleeting tales of mortals. But this was different. This was real, raw, and terrifying. A mortal had awakened his heart, and he could not ignore it. "I cannot promise what will happen," he said slowly. "My life, my curse, it is dangerous. But I promise this. I will protect you, no matter the cost." Ilara nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She could feel the centuries of loneliness in him, the darkness he carried. And yet, she did not flinch. She offered him trust, courage, and something more, a piece of her heart, fragile but unbroken. They returned to the tower, the night still thick with mist and shadows. Kale closed the door behind them, the warmth of the room feeling like a fragile sanctuary in a world that had grown dark and threatening. "Ilara," he said, his voice softer now. "You have changed something in me, something I thought was lost forever." She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the candlelight. "And you have changed me," she whispered. "I am not afraid, because you are here, because you care." Kale took a step closer, their hands brushing. "I have lived for centuries in darkness," he murmured. "But with you, I feel something I never thought possible. Hope, light, a chance at something better. Alara reached for him, her hand resting on his chest. Then let us face the night together, she said softly. Whatever comes, we face it side by side. Kale's dark eyes softened, and for the first time in centuries, he allowed himself to truly feel. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, not possessively, but protectively. The warmth of her pressed against him, fragile yet fierce, and he realized that he had found something more precious than power, more enduring than fear. Outside, the mist swirled, carrying the whispers of the night. The kingdom, dark and fearful, had yet to see the change. But within the walls of the castle, in a small tower room, a mortal girl and the vampire king had formed a bond that could defy time itself. The danger was not gone. The rival factions, the shadows of the past, and the curses that lingered in the bloodline of Kale would return. But for now, in this quiet moment, there was trust, courage, and a fragile hope. Alara leaned against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. Do you think we can really be safe? She asked. Kale looked down at her, his expression a mixture of solemnity and determination. Safe is a word I cannot promise, he said, but together, we can face anything. I will not let harm touch you while I breathe, and I will not let fear rule my heart again, not with you. The night stretched on, silent and still, yet alive with possibility, and as they stood together, mortal and immortal, human and king, the darkness that had ruled their world seemed, for the first time, to hold a glimmer of light. Somewhere in the distance, a shadow stirred a reminder that their peace was fragile, that the world outside the castle walls remained dangerous. But for Kale and Alara, the bond they had forged in fear, trust, and courage was stronger than any darkness, and in that moment, in the quiet of the castle towers, a vampire king and a poor girl discovered that love could awaken even the most ancient of hearts.